There are many learning theories, each one unique in itself, and each one has its own implications for educators, like teachers we find ourselves to be. If you check the course outline, you might find that I have skipped one name, and that name is Jerome Bruner. Bruner. I want you to find information concerning this man, his work as a theorist, as an educationist, as a psychologist, and his contribution to teaching and learning, especially the learning process. Now, as individuals, I want each one of you to realize that all individuals who throughout life have left their footprints in the sand of destiny have been propelled by a desire that is greater than personal comfort. And this was said by Miles Monroe. If we want to leave marks in the sand of destiny that generations following after us will be able to take and say, this man was also born here, this teacher taught here, then according to Monroe, we must be propelled by a desire that is greater than personal comfort. Otherwise, we find to make a mark. And no matter who tries to teach us lessons about life, which is another gem, no matter who tries to teach you lessons about life, you won't understand it until you go through it your own. No matter who tries to teach you and I lessons about life, you and I won't understand it until you and I go through it on our own. And so, take pains and go through Bruner's work and find out what he did and the implications of what he did for teaching and learning. We are going to go through another aspect of a theory of learning, which is different from operant conditioning. And this has to do with cognitive learning. According to the cognitivist, the first of whom who has been recognized as being classical is Jean Piaget. His cognitive theory of learning and human development captured the whole world till today. According to him, as we are going to go through, learning does not necessarily come about when one roams about or interacts with one's environment. But learning goes on, according to him and others like him, the processes of what our mind cognition goes through. And so, in this, we are going to look at Jean Piaget's cognitive theory of learning and development, the stages of cognitive development, Piaget's jargon, and then the test of knowledge, which according to him brings about learning. So by the end of this discussion, each one of you as students should be able to give a summary of the proposal of Jean Piaget. In other words, what is his basic argument in this theory? You'll be able to summarize that. Secondly, you should be able to explain clearly his jargons, schema, assimilation, adaptation, assimilation, and the like. What do they mean? And what are the implications for educators? You should be able, at the end of this discussion, state clearly. Another objective will be able to, at the end of the study, explain why, according to Jean Piaget, learning goes through in the processes of the mind and not necessarily one interacting with one's own environment. Cognitive theory considers how these understandings, now listen, the prime focus of cognitive theory, what is it? It is the structure and development of the individual. Let me repeat. The structure and development of the individual through processes. That is one. Two, the ways in which those processes can affect the person's understanding of and expectation of his or her world. Processes go on through our mind, according to this theory. How these processes affect the individual's, the person's understanding of, and the person's expectation of his world or his world. Secondly, cognitive theory considers how these understandings and then the expectation can affect the individual's behavior. When we have understood something, when we are expecting something, do these affect our behavior? We are going to find out in this study. Piaget, we repeat, is the most famous of the cognitive theories. First, he became interested in thought processes, what people think about. Now, this he came about when he was field testing questions that were being considered for a standard intelligence test for children. Now, we know IQ, IQ is intelligent quotient, and we can measure one's IQ by going through such tests that we call intelligent tests. And Piaget was detailed to look at questions that have been asked on the test item, which were to be used as intelligent tests for children. Now, what was his task in this? His task was to find out the age at which most children could answer each of the question set. That is all his task. Take answer 1, question 1. How many children answered that question? Then he will look at the age or the ages of those children who answered that question 1. And then on to that. Then coincidentally, he found something. Instead of looking at the right answers of the children, he focused on the wrong answers of the children to the question set. Let us go on to find out why that struck him, and therefore shifted his interest to finding the wrong answers and getting interested in the wrong answers of the children instead of the right ones. Piaget's surprise is here. He was surprised that children of the same age, I repeat, children of the same age made similar types of mistakes. He questioned why. So he drew a conclusion that There was and there is a developmental sequence to intellectual growth. Look at that. There is a developmental sequence to intellectual growth. So according to him, how children think is much more important and more revealing and relevant to us than their mental ability. Their mental ability is very important to him than what they know already. Why is it that child age 6, all the children at age 6 got a particular question wrong? Why is that age 8 children got a particular question wrong? Why is it that age 10 and not any other age? So he draws the conclusion that there's a developmental sequence to intellectual growth. You'll find out more as we go on. He draws a conclusion. He held that there are 4 major stages of cognitive development, mind development, mental development, 4 major stages, and that each stage is age related. Look at him here. When age 6, all age 6 children in the test score got one particular question wrong. Age 8, similarly. Age 10, then he draws a conclusion that cognitive development has something to do with growth also. So they are age related. Furthermore, each of the 4 stages has a structural or has structural features that permit certain type of thinking. Each stage, there's a structure. Each structure has a feature, F-E-A-T-U-R-E, feature, that is characteristics, that permits certain type of thinking. And then let's look briefly at some of them. His 4 stages, according to Piaget, are the 0 to 2 years, which he, according to him, is the sensory motor stage, that is the preschool child. Between year 2 to 6 years, he calls it pre-operational. Before operational, pre is before. 7 to 11 years, he calls that concrete operational. Something is concretized. And then from 12 above, he calls that formal operational. What does each of these mean? The sensory stage has the following characteristics. The sensory motor stage, 0 to 2. At this stage, the infant uses the senses and motor abilities to understand his or her world. This period, according to Piaget, begins with reflex. Then it will end with complex coordination between, or the coordination of the sensory motor scales. Coordination. None is performing or doing any activity in isolation. That is why the word coordination is there. The hand, the legs, all that the child has work in unity. Apart from the characteristics, the 0 to 2, there are some major acquisitions that the child can acquire. The infant learns that an object still exists when it is out of sight. Object permanence. Even though the object is out of sight, the child has in its mind that there's something like a ball. So when he sees a ball, he can easily recollect. And he begins to remember and imagine experiences, that is, mental representation of what the child has seen before. This is between 0 and 2. Let us note the following. In Piaget's proposal, an individual's cognitive development in terms of his or her thinking goes through 4 distinct periods. I'm repeating because it's very important to me. The first of the 4 distinct periods I have already said is between the 0 to 2, which Piaget calls sensory motor, because it is during this time that the child learns about the world and expresses this learning through his or her senses and motor skills. But according to Piaget, the 0 to 2 is broken into 6, because it's 0, the child is born. From 0 to 1, the child is doing something. From 1 to 2, the child is still doing something. So, according to him, between 0 and 2, there are 6 stages of the child development and learning that go on. And let us briefly look at them. From 0 to 1 month, this is characterized by reflexes of sucking, grabbing, staring, and listening. 0 to 1. 1 to 4 months, the child acquires what he calls adaptation, accommodation, and coordinating of the child's reflexes. Example: the child can now suck something that satisfies him or her and is able to differentiate it from the sucking of the mother's nipple of the breast. He is able to differentiate that. Now the child can also grab a bottle. He has been grabbing the mother's breast to suck. Now he can grab a feeding bottle and suck it. So now he's accommodating and he's coordinating his reflexes. Between 4 to 8, he learns procedures for making interesting sights. Last, so he can recall them. Responding to people and objects, he can identify that this is the mother. If you want to take the child, you stretch your hand, the child shakes the head. He will not come to you because he doesn't know you. He can identify that you are a stranger. Between 8 to 12 months, there are new adaptations and anticipation. The child becomes more deliberate and purposeful in responding to people and objects. At this stage especially, he can identify somebody who is a stranger who has come to the house. Between the 1 year to 18 months, 1.5 years, the child learns new means through active experimentation. The child can combine experimentation and creativity in action. During this time, you can refer the child as a young or a little scientist, because the children at this time can perform some other things. You give the child some logo and come and see how the child will put the logos in shape and create something. Between 18 to 24 months, there are new means through mental combination. Thinking before doing now becomes the child's chief characteristic. He can experiment, he can create. And during this time, the children are very fanciful and they are very interesting to watch. Now we go to the 2 to 6 years, pre-operational, and the characteristics are as follows. The child uses symbolic thinking. The child uses language to understand the world. So 2 here, symbolic thinking, and then language to understand his or her world. Most of the child's thinking here is egocentric. The child this time, at this stage, understands the world from only one perspective. And that perspective is the child's own. The child is living in his or her own world, imaginative world. And you find the child saying, if I were a teacher, then he goes to stand, say, a plantain, a tree plantain, and then with a stick in the hand will be beating. If I were a teacher, I'll punish this tree. Make believe. That is the main characteristic of the child at this time. What do they acquire at this period? The child's imagination flourishes between 2 years to 6 years. Children gradually begin to dissect. He's now becoming less egocentric, and then he now realizes that there are other children also who behave like he or she does. So he is now beginning to understand the points of view of others. Less egocentric, and then becoming more accommodating. How about 7 to 11? This is the concrete operational period. And what are the characteristics? The child understands and applies logical operations now. Look at the JSS child. 11 years thereabouts there. The child is preparing primary 6 JSS 1 there and is going up. Logical operations, the principles that are held to interpret specific experiences or perceptions. The child is able to do this. What do they acquire at this time of their growth? The child is able to apply logical abilities. Children learn to understand the basic ideas of conservation, number classification, and other concrete ideas. So this time, the child is very concrete. He can concretize ideas in the mind and make them real. That is what they can acquire. From 12 years, formal operational, that is the adolescent child. Early adolescent, and then from on and on till middle age and on. At least we know the adolescent child. He can think abstractly, abstractions, understand hypothetical concepts. So during this time, we find a glimpse of a vast complexity of knowledge before the child, and the child is able to use this. They understand at this point, majority of them believe that they understand nothing because of the vastness of knowledge open to them. Whereas others too believe that they are on the verge of understanding everything. So here when we come to the education implications, whereas a group of adolescents think that, no, we have so much to learn, I don't understand anything. Another adolescent is also believing that he can understand everything. What do you do as a teacher when you have two children like this? Their major acquisitions, things that they can do this time, there's an evolution, that there are many answers to every question. That is why the adolescent child asks so many questions in the class, because like Socrates, he asks you a question, you give an answer, and from that answer he picks and asks another question. As teachers, when we come to the implication, we should not get bored and angry. There are many questions, according to many of them, there are many questions about every answer. And at this time they discuss ethics, ethical issues, they discuss politics, social and moral issues, they discuss them, and they become more interested in these things. Piaget's jargons, he used some words which initially, the first time we come face to face with these words, we find difficult to understand. But as we go on reading and reading, they become clear. According to Piaget, he has the jargon of schema. But let us go on to see. He says that the way children progress from one phase of cognitive development to another, from 0 to 2, from 2 to 6, according to him, is the same throughout the lifespan of any individual. There's no discrimination. Black child, yellow child, green child, white child, the same. So in trying to explain this, that children progress from one phase of cognitive development to another, Piaget now uses some words to make himself clear. And one of the words that he used, we are going to go through them, is equilibrium. Equilibrium, equal, balance. Piaget believes that each one of us, we seek a mental equilibrium, that is, a balance of opposing forces. We are human beings. At times you find that you tell yourself, I'm confused. Why? Anytime you tell yourself, I'm confused, Piaget says that that is in equilibrium. There's no balance between the forces that are working in your mind. And so he uses equilibrium to explain that when what seems to be distorted in our minds becomes clear, then we have reached the stage of equilibrium. So equilibrium, he believed that every one of us seeks mental equilibrium, that is, a balance of opposing forces in our minds. And according to Piaget, we all need to make sense of these conflicting experiences and perceptions in our mind. So in getting with this, Piaget comes to say that the child in his or her mental growth, people achieve this equilibrium through mental concepts. And these mental concepts, the ideas that come to exist in our minds, he refers to schema or schemas. They are mental concepts. They help to strike a harmony between the ideas that we have and the experiences that we go through. Schema. We can use an illustration. So according to Piaget, a schema is a general way of thinking about or interacting with ideas and objects in the environment. Now, let us look at a child, a 3.5 to 4 year old child. And then the father has the two balls that the child often plays with. He gives the first ball and he stretches the right hand and he takes the ball. He gives the second ball and then with the left hand he takes the second ball. But the father plays a trick and gives a third ball. The two hands are full. So what is the child going to do? He watches the child. Then surprisingly, the child puts one of the balls between his or her two thighs. So he has released one hand. The right hand ball he has put between his thighs, and then he stretches the right hand to take the third ball. He has used the schema of grabbing to take 3 balls. Initially, he was confused because the two hands are full and it is only the two hands he can use to take. He's confused. But the moment he's able to take the third ball by putting one in between the thighs, he has used an existing schema of grabbing. and therefore the disequilibrium has become equilibrium. I'm sure you understand it by this illustration. So when existing schemas do not seem to fit present experiences, we become, or we go into the state of disequilibrium. So disequilibrium, I say again, is a kind of imbalance that initially produces confusion and leads to growth eventually, as the person modifies the old schema and then constructs a new one to fit the new condition. A new condition in the illustration was presented by the father by giving the child the third ball. Now, children, in their manipulation and their use of existing schemas, take two glasses and another illustration. One is narrow because it is tall. You measure water and you put it in two glasses, and the child looks at the two glasses of equal size, of equal height. But you pour this same water into a taller glass, and you ask the child of age 6, and he tells you the water in the taller glass is more than the one in the shorter glass. Conservation is the problem with this child here. But if you call a child age 7, the child tells you that no, the water in the smaller glass, that is the taller one and the shorter one, are the same. At age 7, there's an existing schema of equal measurement. And so you will trace the question anywhere, and the child of 7 years of age will tell you there's no difference between the water in the two glasses. Whereas age 6, the age 6 child will tell you that the water in the taller glass is more than the other one. So children, according to Piaget, have thirst for knowledge, and all of us as human beings have thirst for knowledge. So periods of disequilibrium are periods that help people to learn new knowledge, even though they can be very disquieting because very frustrating. So anytime my students tell me Valley View is frustrating, our lectures are frustrating us, we go to the finance office and we are frustrated, I laugh. Without getting frustrated, learning cannot go on. This is basic. If you run away from this basic understanding, you cease to be a student. And the best teacher, the master teacher, is the teacher who continues to learn. And learning comes about as a result of frustration, disequilibrium. So I'll pray for you so that you continue to be frustrated at Valley View, so that it will go on for you to learn, to continue to learn and better your position. Because it has been said that use the stones that somebody threw at you to hit you. Use those stones and build a foundation to stand on it. The person was angry. He thought that he was going to destroy. So he took stones and he was throwing the stones at you. He throws, you catch. He throws, you catch. Use those stones as foundation stones and build and stand on it. That is what it means. Frustration is all that. So when you are in Valley View and you get frustrated, don't blame Valley View. Valley View is becoming a very good teacher for you, so you can continue to learn. Now, if you look at this, children poke, children pull, children taste everything they lay their hands on. That is the preschool child. But as they grow, they begin to ask thousands of questions. At school age, they become avid readers. You give the child anything, he begins to read, and he is collecting information from here and from there. When they get to adolescent age, there's a wide variety of roles and experiences. So they are asking questions. They are the why, the how, the where. Anytime you have said something, one thing, they have said 7 of them. So all the above take place because people at every age want cognitive challenges. So if we are not cognitively, if we are not challenging ourselves, we will cease to learn. We will cease to improve ourselves. So, according to Piaget, recognition of the child's active search for knowledge, for our own active search for knowledge, is the essence of cognitive theory of human development. Let me repeat it. Recognition of our active searching for knowledge is the essence of cognitive theory of human development. And then the active searching is also the essence of intelligence. What I have said already, I have said it again, that when you are frustrated, it puts you in a frame of mind to recognize that you need something as the answer to your frustration. That is search. So as human beings, we all seek to clarify and understand the myriad, many sensations and ideas that bombard us in our minds. It always will go on, will not finish until we are in the grave. The result of this quest for comprehension is intelligence. No doubt about that. A quest for knowledge helps us to comprehend, which according to Piaget comprises 2 interrelated processes. So we now arrive to the next of his jargons: organization and adaptation. There are so many of you, when you came to Valley View, you have failed to adapt yourself to the new environment. And so it has become very difficult for you to have joy in Valley View because you have not adapted yourself. Your home environment is still in your mind. Some of you think that you are still in your homes. But according to Piaget, you need to organize and adapt. Anytime an individual fails to organize and adapt, the person has ceased to learn. So look, we organize our thoughts so that we can make sense by separating what is more important than what is trivial. And that is why you hear in Valley View people do not orientate. They say that you have come or don't come and major in minors. Because your main preoccupation at Valley View is to study. The other things, friendships and other things that go on, they are on the periphery. They have become part, but they are not the main. So, when we do this, Piaget says that we are establishing links between one idea and another. So you can say, oh, why is this most important to me? Prioritizing. So you make a to-do list. Why are you doing that? Piaget is helping us to understand. So, example, in the process of learning about various animals, a child may organize them mentally in clusters. These are birds. These are mammals. These are fishes. At the same time, people adapt. As they organize, they adapt their thinking to include the new ones that they know. And so Piaget says that as individuals go through the period of organization and adaptation, we go through assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation is to add to what you have already. So when you assimilate, you are internalizing, you are accommodating, you are making it part. And so often people say that what you cannot cure, what cannot be cured, must be lived with. So assimilation, according to Piaget, in the process of assimilation, information is simply added to the cognitive organization that we have already done. And then in the process of accommodating, the intellectual organization which has taken place has to adjust to the new idea. So the process of assimilation and accommodation continues through life. We are always organizing material in our mind. We are adding and adding. So always there's assimilation, always there's accommodation going on. No, so according to Piaget, these are the 4 major stages of cognitive development. And because, according to him, learning is age related, between 0 to 2, the child is developing physically, and learning also is going on. Between 6, that is 2 to 6, developmental stage, growth, maturation is going on. Learning is also going on. Between 7 to 11, the same. And the former operational stage is the same. Now, if this is the cognitive theory of learning which is age related, what do you do as a teacher? If you are a preschool teacher, even though we are training you to go and function at the senior high school, how about if after your course you are posted to a school and say, go and handle preschool children? Would you refuse the posting? I don't think you would. And so you need to know the characteristics of the preschool child so you can handle that child. So revise your notes on the preschool period according to Piaget, and you realize that when you go to the preschool school and the classroom of the preschool children, you won't find anything except material that the children play with. You find a mat with their teachers. Teachers are lying on the mats with the children, and it is activity. When you look at the 2 to 4, the preschool years, go to see. The same happens there, crèche and all that. But you may have realized, you have not forgotten, that the government, by a white paper, has made preschool become part of the formal schooling timetable. It is not for nothing. He wants qualified people to handle these children so that we can build a fairer future for our educational superstructure. And so as teachers, you come to realize that why do we have to use relia, the actual object? Because children here at these stages want to see. They are touching, the reflexes, the motor skills. So you need to look at that one. This goes on through to 6. So there are characteristics, even though there are differences. It is when you get to the pre-operational, concrete. When it is concrete, before concrete, they are thinking concretely, not in abstraction. So you don't go to give them abstract things, because you know that their learning is age related. So in the classroom situation, one thing that has come as a result of Piaget's and the cognitive theory of learning is streaming. Streaming is putting children in groups according to their mental ages. So you have group A, group B, you give assignment. Even though you are teaching a similar topic, but when you are given an exercise, you know that the A group is a very good mentally. So you give them some questions that are a little harder. Not too hard to frustrate them and not too easy for them to work and then make noise. Because you have done streaming, you are giving work, you are teaching according to their age group or their when I say age, I'm not very much concerned with body age, but mental age. So it goes on with all, so that when you know the characteristics of the children that you are teaching from Piaget's theory, every teacher must know the audience. And your audience and my audience are the children that we are teaching. And because of that, that is why it is very important when we come to RPK, the child's relevant previous knowledge. We have never forgotten, we will not forget in all the theories that we are talking about in terms of learning. Because one, the concrete stage, the child is able to concretize. What are we learning from that? From the adolescent you are going to meet at the senior high school, formal operational. So it has come to us to know that when we are teaching, we must teach from concrete to abstract. We must teach from particular to general. You don't just generalize when the children don't know the particular. You can achieve your objective if you ever do that. And so Piaget's theory has so many implications for us. His jargons will mean to tell us that you and I, when we come to the schema, the assimilation, that we are finding it difficult to understand. So here, the teacher must give specific, clear instructions to his or her students. Explain every bit of a concept clearly before we move on when we are teaching. So we are teaching in steps. Before we go from step 1 to step 2, we make sure the child has understood the information, the content in step 1. We have assessed what they have learned in step 1 before we go to step 2. Because in step 2, we are going to teach another concept which is new, even though they are related. So Piaget's jargons is helping us as teachers to incorporate in our teaching, explaining concepts very clear to our students as we teach. And so we have gone through Piagetian theory, Piaget's cognitive theory of learning. And I have mentioned a few implications for the classroom teaching. If you don't stream, if you don't put your children into groups, class management will be very negative for you. The more intelligent children who are sharp will finish and they will make noise and will be teasing the others. From Piaget's streaming, I want to tell you to find from YouTube a video of Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein. When we come to teaching, the topic teaching, I'll bring Albert Einstein again. But for now, let me mention that the teacher who first met Albert Einstein in the primary school wrote him off, that he was not a good material. And so Einstein was picked out of school. Let me use a language, until a teacher found him and took him back to school. And Albert Einstein rose to become the greatest mathematician and physicist, the first person to split the atom. But he was written off as a good-for-nothing fellow. So from Piaget, we are learning that let us know the characteristics of our children so we can address them and teach them.